Hello, everyone. Welcome to You'll Never Talk Alone. I'm your friend Joseph Craven. I'm joined by Alex Lebel. We're sitting here basking in the glory known as absolutely destroying a Champions League opponent. It is a feeling that we have come to really enjoy, I think, in our lifetimes, and it doesn't get old, which is a very nice thing as well. Especially considering over the weekend was, I mean, not the worst outcome that you could ever have had, but a really frustrating outcome. So this was a good rebound matchup for sure as we prepare for what is a massive, massive weekend in the life of Liverpool Football Club. So, Alex, I want to ask you first and foremost. Just we'll get this out of here, out of the way real quick. How massive was it for PSG for Messi to finally get a goal and prove all the doubters right?
Yeah, they're really sticking it to people who said that buying a bunch of very good players wouldn't work, and it turns out that Messi's pretty good at this game, and so it's painful to watch them succeed, but it's a little better watching them do that against Man City.
Yeah, and that's what I think is really important here is that they did it against Man City,
No,
and that Pessi can only score penalties.
P&L Pessy.
P&L Pessi. I honestly saw this on a little chat earlier today where someone referred to Kevin De Bruyne as Pevin Peproina. And it's the most perfect name I've ever heard in my entire life. Like it does not work. It should not work. It should never be uttered, and I'm so happy that it happened. Anyway, let's just roll on past that then and focus on what we came here to talk about. Obviously, since the last time we recorded, busy schedule is still kind of throwing our normal recording schedule off just a little bit, but we're trying to make do with what we've got. Since the last time we recorded, there was one match in particular that we need to mention that does not hold a huge amount of importance in the grand scheme of things, but has a lot of positives to be taken from at the same time, and that's the 3-0 victory over Norwich in the Carabao Cup. A big victory, I think, because of the fact that it was a win from all of the depth players. And it shows that our depth players are, the types of people that we've been trying to acquire for the past few seasons. Alex, what did you actually take from that 3-0 win and the fact that we got to see performances from Taki, C, Divock, Ox, Naby, Curtis, who we'll talk a lot about in this episode, I'm sure. There's a whole lot of positive. What actually, do you take from a match like that?
I mean, that's really it, is seeing that our depth players, even though they haven't really played that much, maybe Pivac Origi has played more than the rest of the team recently.
Pivac!
But it was great to see him and Pakumi Pinamino score. They deserved it. They've bided their time. It was kind of funny to hear Klopp after the first time Origi played, be like, "Yeah, we wanted to sell him, but nobody bought him, so I guess he's still here. He's still pretty good." And so that ended up working out for us. But in addition to them, I thought Kostas Tsimikas played really well,
as he has done quite a bit this year.
Yeah, and as someone pointed out on the glorious website that is Twitter, that we were the first ever people on Twitter to use the Crossless moniker. So we will continue to use that every time that Crossless plays well. But he was crosslessing the ball really well, and I thought he was a standout performer. But great to see our depth players. We're progressing. It'll be one of those things where we might accidentally end up doing really well in that tournament, and I think we should, because it'd be nice to win some silverware, even if it's not the most major. I still want to win a trophy. And great that we didn't draw a Premier League opponent, because we always seem to do that in cups.
Right.
And we finally got someone. We got Preston, who will surely be missing Ben Davies because they bought a player initially that didn't exist. but they're still thriving off of selling us a player that doesn't exist. So it'll be an interesting Ben Davies derby. I'm sorry, Penn Pavies derby.
Penn Pavies. If Ben Davies ever got a chance to score from a penalty, I think that I, as a human being, would erupt. I would just burst into flames. I wouldn't be able to wouldn't be able to handle it or make any sense of it whatsoever. Yeah, it was. We've talked for as long as I can remember. I'm willing to say the entirety of my natural-born life. We've talked about needing to have depth. It has been the biggest underlying issue, I think, in the entire FSG reign. Since they took over, and it was something that was a factor when Brendan Rodgers was in charge. It's something that has always kind of eluded us, even in these Jurgen Klopp years, where depth itself has never felt comfortable. And while we still have not reached a point in which we feel like we're buying on the level that other clubs are able to buy at, for various financial reasons, financial or oil tycoon reasons. Outside of that, this showed that the players that we've been getting do fit and work well, and actually if we were to go up against, some Premier League opponents with that particular lineup, I would not panic. Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily feel super comfortable if we put that exact lineup out there and we had Kavim and we had Cade Gordon and we had Connor Bradley hanging around. I wouldn't feel super comfortable, but I wouldn't panic because I know that, hey, we can actually rest Andy Robertson this season because Krostis is doing well. Prostis Promicus is doing well. We can rest Andy. We can actually use a player like Taki, who we just didn't have room for in the lineup. And how good was it that he actually did go on loan, so he got a lot of playing time and felt more comfortable playing in England, because you could see right off the bat, in that Norwich matchup, how much more comfortable it makes me feel a little bit better. Not necessarily like it's a massive game changer, but it makes me feel better than it used to. And of course, not long after that, here we've got that. What we do have to talk about here, regrettably, that bizarre match against Brentford. The debut of the McDonald kits, the I'm going to call them the McDoubles.
Yeah.
Debut of the McDoubles kits, and of course that really disappointing 3-3 draw that happened against Brentford. It seems like it was one of those scripts that we've tended to see in recent years in the Premier League, where the newly promoted, riding high, small team shows up and at the beginning of the Premier League season is trying to prove they belong, and it'll taper off by Christmas time. But we had to catch them early on, where they were really extra feisty. We were not playing good defense. It just was a weird one in general. But tell me about your initial impressions of what happened in that particular matchup, Alex.
I've never been so kind of impressed and complimentary of an opposition team without also acknowledging that they should not have gotten a point out of that match.
Yeah.
They played really well. They targeted us well. They knew what they wanted to do. They were kind of crushing us with those long balls and the aerial threat and just kind of taking advantage of our sloppy mistakes. But we really just undid ourselves.
Yeah.
We conceded 3 really dumb goals. None of them were aesthetically pleasing. None of them were that particularly well crafted overall compared to the moves that they had that didn't end up in goals.
Yeah.
And it was just sloppy from us. We could have scored more than we did. We should have scored more than we did. And it was one of those weird times where you could see that the fan base and the team all knew that every time we conceded, we would be fine going and scoring again. But then when we did that, we didn't really seem particularly bothered to try to protect the lead. It was yeah, it was just weird.
It really was. And every single like Brentford goal, as you just said, so much of what was going on with them was, or what actually happened with the goals was not like indicative of some of the better opportunities they had that didn't work out for them. Their goals were just, I mean, it was the result of being feisty and scrappy and them being in like the right place at the right time. But it also had to be right place, right time goals. It's not
Right.
like they really were creating a huge amount. They were taking advantage of us playing sloppy defense and taking advantage of us not being able to clear the ball. Like my brother had come over to my house to watch the match with me, and the entire time, every single like time that it happened where the ball just came anywhere close and chaos was about to ensue, we both were just like, all right, hold our breaths. Is this going to be another goal like that or not? And, it typically was. It just was a bizarre, bizarre match. Were there any positives that you think we could take from that that aren't just named Curtis Jones?
Yeah, I mean, Mo played well. We did score 3 goals. We scored 3 really nice goals. Jota continues to do that thing where he wins and scores headers despite not being very tall.
I know. It's just incredible.
It's really strange, and I know he's not really had his shooting boots on as much this season, and probably could have had more goals. But it was great to see him score. I thought we had pretty good performances all around, apart from the brain farts. To be honest, like it wasn't terrible. It just was terrible 3 times, and that was it.
I think that's what makes it so frustrating, though, is exactly that. It was not a terrible match, and it should not have necessarily ended like it did. Like it should have been. It should have been better than that. It just should have been, and it wasn't. And so, like, it's not like we played poorly. We played really well most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think it comes back to, what we kind of already said. It was, or what I've said at least was, it was their goals were right place, right time sort of opportunities. And I feel like the placement of this match was a right place, right time match. Catching them when they're early into the season trying to prove themselves, catching us when we are not necessarily that we look ahead and ignore matchups, but obviously we're looking ahead in some sort of aspect to the City match that's coming up. It just, it was right place, right time for it to go the way that it did. But it also was right place, right time for the weekend, which had just a lot of results like this,
Yeah.
I mean, other than obviously Chelsea losing to City is not an upset, but Chelsea being an early on title favorite and dropping points in a way like that, it is that's, and then Villa getting one up on United. It was a weird weekend in general, right?
Yeah. It just teams are dropping points left and right. It's just there's a lot of solid teams, and it's just one of those things where mistakes are being punished, and it will lead to a lot of interesting twists and turns in the title race. I think we've kind of grown accustomed to teams just being so good that they don't ever lose or drop points. But that's really hard to continue forever. So it's kind of natural that it seems to happen. It's starting to happen more and more, especially as there's, like we've talked about, so much investment going on, so many teams building up like good arsenals of players. It's just a lot going on.
I'm sorry, I'm not used to hearing the terms "good players" and Arsenal.
Yeah,
in the same sentence. If you could rephrase that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, teams are building up good collections of players.
Thank you.
To work better.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense to me. I mean, you expect a league to kind of go in ebbs and flows. You expect any sport in general to kind of have moments in which like some teams might jump way out, but other teams will eventually like catch up in some sort of way. Like that's how it's supposed to be. Like unless you are, college football in America, like other teams will catch up to the top dogs at some point, and the game will balance itself out a little bit. And I think that's one of the reasons why we see a team like a Villa come back and do what they did like last year, and do pretty well, and a Leeds show up last season after being away from the Premier League for so long and do as well as they did for a while. Like it's why you have those moments, and it's why you see a matchup against Brentford go the way that it did,
Right.
because that's talent is talent, and as the game changes and more players grow up playing a different way and like a more modern way, you find a lot more guys that can do a whole lot more, that might not be your big name players, and can make some stuff happen. It just is kind of a shame, I think, to have come out of this weekend where we could have a 3-point lead going into the City match on the table, and instead only have 1 point. And I think that really hurts. Or not hurt. It hurts emotionally. I don't know if it hurts in the grand scheme of things, but it certainly doesn't help.
Yeah, and it's one of those, especially in the way that it happened. Like, it clearly could have been 3-point lead. It should have been. It just wasn't. Yeah. And that match would have been amazing as a neutral, I can assure you. But as a fan of the team that should have won and did not win, it was very frustrating. Although it was still good. Like looking back at the way they played, like they were so well drilled and they had so many players playing really well that it wasn't like, oh, this team sucks. How did this happen? It's like this team played well, but the goals that they scored were dumb.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, it wasn't indicative of the play of the game. It wasn't indicative even of how well they had played as a team, and not just Liverpool. It was weird. It was weird. Anything, though, that you feel like when looking at that is a lasting, maybe not concern, but is there anything that seems like it is something that will play into effect down the line as well, or does it seem like it was probably just a one-off weird occurrence and will bounce back from it? You got any idea?
There was one thing that was pointed out by a lot of the people that were breaking down the game, is that Brentford were targeting aerial long balls, because I know Klopp called that out, and in the post-match said they killed us with their long balls, and that wasn't really an insult. That was like high lofted balls were really troublesome for us, and they were targeting Matip's side specifically with Ivan Toney, who was very good in the air, and it was working. So that would be one thing to watch out for, because I mean, you look at Virgil's side, and he's just so dominant in the air, and Matip is usually pretty good at defensive headers and not attacking headers, but someone's coming up against him that is also good in the air, and maybe a little bit stronger, that is a potential threat that we'd have to watch out for.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if that's also like his having to kind of get back into form a bit, as well. Like that's, he's just not quite, maybe not quite 100% still type of situation. But yeah, it does make sense. And I mean, them playing long balls was clearly a strategy to create chaos in the box and benefit from that, which is exactly how their goals came about. So it makes total sense. I feel like it was such a fluke defensive thing. It almost reminds me of, and I had made this comment in the group text that I was like, was this our worst defensive performance in since the title winning season? And then was reminded that seven goal loss to Villa was just a year ago. It honestly feels like an eternity ago. It was just a year ago, but it sort of feels a little bit like that. Like that was such a bizarre match that, we had several other bad matches for the rest of last season and all that, obviously, but that was such a standalone, bizarre match. This had the same feel to it. Like, I don't know how much of this will actually apply. We'll have to kind of see moving forward, but it seems difficult to take this match and really translate anything out of that moving forward as well. Especially considering we do have like the immediate answer match and
right.
what happened, just earlier today as far as our recording time on Tuesday, but against Porto in the Champions League. Obviously, there were just double checking right here. Obviously, we're missing Trent because of that groin injury, but like outside of that, it's the exact same starting lineup. Yeah, it's the exact same starting lineup besides Trent. So Milner filling in at right back. And to come out against an FC Porto team that is on a great like Portuguese winning streak and all this sort of stuff, and to just absolutely drub them every which way, have the most incredible Firmino goals that were just such incredible. Like if anyone else on that team on our team had scored those, we would have looked at him and gone, "Man, that was a real Bobby goal." You know, so it just works out that Bobby did that. Curtis again has an incredible match. Doesn't do anything that compares on an individual basis to that absurd shot against Brentford.
Yeah.
Which like I will see in my dreams for a decade to come. But just a solid performance. I mean, what was different this time around? Is Milner a better than right back than Trent?
Yeah, now Milner's wasted at right back.
Right.
Like Will said during the match thread. But yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's just there's some teams that play really well against other teams. Like you look at us against Norwich, and it's not. I mean, Norwich are pretty bad, but this is spanning over years and years. And you look back at our recent history in the past few years against Porto, and every time we play them, we just destroy them. And it's wild to see because you look at that Porto team and the things that characterize them are like being defensively tough to break down and the work rate, and they just pressure you and they'll make life uncomfortable for you. But every time we play them, it's like the easiest stroll in the park, and it just always works out in our favor. And I don't really get it, but we just saw a lot of great performances today, a lot of players being at the right place at the right time. We scored some dumb goals ourselves. The first two goals were pretty stupid. The Bobby's first goal was pretty dumb. We kind of made a bit of our own luck, but also we're just clearly the better team. So I think everything that was clicking for us today was making sure that we're not switching off like we did on the weekend against Brentford.
Yeah, this seemed like a great exercise in fixing the stuff that we didn't do as well. And it just helps that exactly what you're saying. Like sometimes you just have teams that you show up for whatever reason. And this was one of those examples. But how good is it to be in this position in the Champions League right now where we've won the first two matches that we've played? The only team in the group that have won both matches so far. And, how good does that feel to start off this new Champions League campaign and show, hey, we have not forgotten how to play European football. Like, we're still here. Don't overlook us. How good is that?
I think the only downside is that this was not a game where we scored 3 goals and that was it. We went a little bit too far. So our streak of scoring 3 goals every match is over. And it was fun while it lasted. But
what a ride.
No, I think it's a fantastic position to be in. You look at a lot of the other big teams and you look at all the other top clubs, and they're not turning out the results like that at all. It's going to be a really fun time to play either Bruges or Sheriff in the semifinals and then the other team in the final, because those seem to be our only competition to make it to make it through to the end.
Can we pause for a moment and talk about freaking Sheriff? What in the world? Who are they? What did they have? What? I'm at a loss for words.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like there's just so much about it that's just so weird. There's been a lot of really interesting articles written. I know there was one by Nick Ames on The Guardian, and I'm sure there's one on The Athletic about like the team chef's second cousin or something.
Right.
Like 40,000 words on that. But it is such an interesting story. Like hope I don't misquote it, but like they're not technically, maybe they don't consider themselves Moldovan or something along that. They're in like a separate breakaway state within the country. I mean, they've won the league the past like 19 or 18 of the 20 times. They don't have a sponsor on their shirt. They look like they just picked up their kits from like Dick's Sporting Goods and slapped a sheriff's badge from the big Thunder Mountain Railroad on their kit. It's just strange, but that winning goal, oh my gosh, what a hit. You just blasted that. Like you can't even really like dream about doing anything better than that. Hitting a leathered upper 90 volley at the Bernabeu to win as this tiny minnow team. So what? Just ridiculous stuff. The game is broken.
It is. It looks like it's like a FIFA glitch. Is what it looked like. It was incredible.
They can't even be on FIFA. No one. Who do you even talk to about getting the rights for that?
Like I'm looking up their history right now, and they are, first of all, they were the first team from Moldova to win an international title, winning in the Commonwealth of Independent States Cup in 2003 and 2009, and the first club in Moldova to sign players from Brazil and the continent of Africa. So like, Sheriff is like bold, forward-thinking team here, you know? It's an impressive place. And they are, okay, so what it is that they are from, what is it? Transnistria?
Yeah.
I'm going to assume that's how it's pronounced. It's how it's spelled, so I'm going to assume it seems like it'd be pretty phonetic. But it apparently is an unrecognized breakaway state located in the narrow strip of land between the river Dniester and the Moldovan-Ukrainian border. And it is internationally recognized as part of Moldova. So that's like the background of them, is that the city they're in is in an unrecognized breakaway state. Just wild. Just their team history is wild. What they did at the Bernabeu is wild. Like, it's just wild. And it capped off what was, quite a day in the Champions League. I mean, normally, Bobby Firmino casually dropping a goal on a keeper who has left the stadium for some reason would be like the top, one of the top storylines of weird in a match day like this. But no, they absolutely took the cake, and it just was so much fun. It kind of reminds you of kind of what you're saying earlier about like other teams catching up a little bit just in the international game, in the sport in general. And I think that's a lot of fun. It'll be crazy to see, how we match up against them in the Champions League finals for sure.
Yeah.
But all right, so there's a question that does arise here from the past couple of matches, and it comes into like, what do we do with Curtis Jones right now, on the hot run of form that he is in? When the midfield comes back to like full health, does he have to start? I mean, I feel like we kind of have to keep this Fab, Hendo, and Curtis midfield going for as long as possible, right? Because that they're doing really well. What do we do with him?
He's definitely going to start this weekend, mostly because he's one of the only like consistently fit players that we have. Because I mean, Naby was on the bench today, but coming off an injury, as he always is. So I can't really take Curtis out of the team the way he's been playing.
Right.
But yeah, once we get everybody back, and that's a big assumption, assuming that there will be a time where we have everyone fit and healthy and able to play. I think he'll get plenty of opportunities, but it'll be one of those things where we have different configurations for different opponents, and there will be certain types of opponents that his game will better suit, and he'll get the nod and he'll get the weight of responsibility in those matches, and he'll deliver. I mean, he's stepping into the position of, I am a senior player, I have responsibility in this team. It's up to me to do a very specific job to create attacking opportunities, and I'm going to do it. And he's really thriving off of that. I know when he kind of came in this season a little bit, he'd been recovering from a concussion, and he was doing the thing that he first did when he broke into the team, was like maybe taking a half second too long on the ball, and windows were closing, but that has slowly been going away. I mean, you saw it with the goal that he scored against Brentford, but really today, his vision, his execution, his decisiveness in what he was doing led to goals, led to assists, led to just us playing really well. And you wouldn't have, I mean, you might, because we just destroy Porto all the time, but you wouldn't have this 5-1 result without the way that he played today. And he was deservedly man of the match.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. You give me just a second. I'm actually pulling up the goal against Brentford real quick just to rewatch it. Because it happened in my, it happened and my brother and I were watching, just screamed at the top of our lungs. Just wow. Yeah, it's, okay, he brings, so all the different midfield players that we have, obviously bring different elements to what they do so well. Like Henderson is probably never going to be the most talented player on the pitch, but he's always going to bring the most heart, at all times. And he is the spark plug. He is the catalyst from a mental and formational aspect there. And Fabinho is the when he's 100% healthy and all that, like we've really saw today, he is the engine, that runs things. And I think that's why Curtis's position as like the wild card plays so well into it. Because, I mean, how many of those goals today against Porto were created because Curtis decided to try to show off that leg, Like he scores the ridiculous goal against Brentford, but then against Porto, he's still attempting those shots. And you and I have talked on the podcast several times about how, like, that's one area of the game that our players just don't ever do. We don't attempt long shots. Ox will do it. Now Curtis will do it. And Fabinho would do it too, but Fabinho was always like not going to do it unless he just knew for some reason it was going to be a screaming, upper 90 goal from like 45 out, and it was just casually like, yeah, okay, here we go. Like it was just the weirdest thing. Like he doesn't attempt those, he just scores them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, so like Curtis brings that other dimension and that other element. And I think it's just one of those things that just shows like some tactical versatility. Because we know Thiago is not that type of player, but Thiago is deft passer, a quarterback of a team, just putting the ball where it needs to be at all times. And we know that Naby is not a long shot wild card type of player, but Naby's going to try to dribble past people and be forward moving in that way. And I just think it's fascinating that he brings something else, and it makes me wonder like what we feel is the best fit for what we ultimately want to do moving forward. And if it is Curtis, or if it is Thiago, or if it is, Naby, like what it might actually be. I'm just glad to see him in this run of form, though.
I am too, because we talked a lot in preseason about like, well, we've got all our midfield options. There's Harvey, there's Naby coming back, there's Thiago, and we didn't really talk about Curtis that much. He felt like kind of an afterthought, but he is really, really good. And every time he plays, he grows as a player and gets better and better. Like it's so clear to see his progress, and he's one of those midfielders that we have that will play that position that seems goal hungry, and that adds a lot to the way that he plays. It adds a lot to the way that our attack unfolds, is because he wants to score, and what that means is he'll not only set up other people to score, but put them in positions to give him the ball so that he can score, and that creates a lot of opportunities for us overall.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm loving watching it so far.
Yeah,
loving watching it for sure. Okay, so I do think that it's probably time for us to focus ahead and talk about the big one this weekend. Of course, being the hugely vaunted matchup against City, the two title winners from the past two seasons going head to head for the first time this season on Sunday. The premier obvious like marquee matchup for the entire weekend. Just It's going to be interesting. We all know it's going to be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like we get it. You don't have. It's one of those things you don't have to promote it. It's circled on the calendar already. Obviously, a little bit of a benefit for us being able to have that good midweek match. We might have not have had the good match over the weekend. City had the good match on the weekend and the bad midweek match.
Mm-hmm.
We had the opposite. So you'd think that spirits are a little bit higher right now because, well, City really, I think, really wants to get a Champions League at some point in time because they just can't do it. Like they really want that, and like, so I think that will weigh on them a little bit. But this matchup right now, like, what do you see going into it? What do you see about how they're playing and how we match up so far?
One thing that outright terrifies me at this point is the fact that it will likely be Jack Grealish versus James Milner on that side.
Oof.
And Milner's good at a lot of things, and Milner was fantastic today, but he is coming up against a player who is riding supremely high on confidence and thrives off of that and has just been torching people left and right on on that side. And that is not a matchup that I'm looking forward to, and I think it'll be a big day for Milner and for Matip on that side to try to double up, to try to prevent kind of the same thing that happened in that weird Villa match last year where he just ran the show. So that's going to be probably the turning point of this entire match. One thing that also plays against us is that Pep did something kind of normal against Chelsea and played like a traditional formation and with players in their normal position, and it worked. So
that lunatic.
But that just means that he probably won't try something like playing Ederson in midfield and like signing Aguero back from Barcelona and playing him at right back or something weird.
Well, he won't try to put Ederson in midfield. Ederson's going to try to put himself in midfield.
So yeah, it's gonna be a whole lot of normalcy from them that I'm not looking forward to. But yeah, I honestly think the whole match goes on that one matchup.
Yeah. The news about Trent and that groin injury kind of popping up in training this week was a bit of a gut punch, for sure, because we know that anytime there's a vague injury just kind of floated out there, and they try to brush it under the rug a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime that happens, then we know that it's worse than they're trying to let on. They being the club itself, which is always worrisome, Yeah. But I do, yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that for sure. I'm very curious as to what the rationale for preparing for that actually is amongst the team. That's one of those things we have to look out for. But it does, I feel like, kind of help that for the most part, City has looked like a little bit of a vulnerable team right now.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they don't look like a truly dominant powerhouse club like they are, but they do also look like a team that, will look completely lost against PSG.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was a pretty good match, but also like PSG just kind of looked like they were prepared and City kind of wasn't. City still kind of looks like the type of team that will randomly lose to Tottenham, who sucks.
Yeah,
and sucks bad. Like they don't look. They look a little bit vulnerable. City does. Not saying that. Okay, well, I'll say it like they look vulnerable by their standards, which are very lofty. So that does give a little bit of a bit of I don't know. It's two good teams. When we're at our peak, obviously we are one of the best teams in the league. So there's no reason to think that this won't be two very, very good teams going head to head against each other. What do we have to do in order to get a victory this weekend, though?
Got to take our chances. We've noted that in most matches, except for this last one against Porto, we've created chance after chance, and we've scored at least 3 of them every time. But when we're making those chances, we got to take advantage of them against teams that are as good as this. And on the flip side of things, we have to be switched on. We can't be sloppy. We can't be making errors like we were against Brentford. And we can't be kind of waiting to be reactive and caught flat-footed. We have to be as aggressive as they're going to be to us, because when they're under pressure, they can lead to mistakes, especially with their kind of the way they play, where some of their passes can end up being super risky. And if we can take advantage of that and punish them for those, then we'll be in good shape. But yeah, it's kind of be like the Chelsea match. We just got to be pretty much perfect in order to get a result.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you see us being able to be pretty much perfect the way that we're playing right now?
I think so. It will be interesting because, again, one of our key components of our typical machine will be out, but I think we can definitely do it, and I think we'll see a lot of other people step up. It's a good time for Curtis to be coming into form, and he can just kind of put them under pressure with his willingness to go at them. I mean, Mo's on form. Mane got a goal. Bobby scored twice.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
people that need to score are scoring, and that will help give them confidence going into a match like this.
I think if there's one great thing about this team right now is that they don't give me any reason to not believe in them.
Yeah.
Like last year, obviously the injury crisis was always going to put doubt in our minds, and this is more reminiscent of the title-winning team. What we know this team is supposed to be when they're all healthy and they're all locked in. We know what they're capable of. This was more reminiscent of that, and I think that goes a long way and is supremely helpful to all of us as fans, keeping our sanity.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of those things that can't be overlooked. Just the peace of mind that comes with just knowing that this is who we're supposed to be right now, and this is going to be pretty telling, I think, of where we are and if how serious we are as an entire club this season, and how sweet it's going to be to lift up the quadruple of the Carabao, the FA, the Champions League, and the Premier League, because it's just going to happen, obviously. All right, let's wrap up all of this with a little bit of, you had to make a prediction here, Alex. Our predictions are always incredibly accurate, I'd like to say. Always super on point. Now, if you had to make a prediction about how this match goes and maybe a potential at a scoreline prediction, would you dare to do so, sir?
I'm going to go for it. I think it's going to be a very tense, very nerve-wracking match. One thing that will tremendously help us in this is that it's at home. And as we saw this weekend against Brentford, home support is a big factor. Their atmosphere was incredible, and it definitely helped spur the team on. And I think we'll have something similar happen to us. I think it will be close, but I'm feeling the classic YNTA scoreline of 2-1 Liverpool.
Nice. I like that a whole lot. I feel still hopeful about things. I think this might be a bit of a tricky matchup that ultimately will be driven by as you just said, the emotions of the crowd, the home supporters for sure. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to predict a draw here, but I think you've talked me into going with a 2-1 victory as well. Why not? Yeah, I think that the home crowd does play a huge role in it for sure, because we just know how, Anfield is a fortress.
Yep.
Like that is a genuine statement that is seemingly genuinely true. I you know what? I'm going with you on it as well. 2-1, the difference maker being James Milner getting a penalty goal.
Yeah.
We're gonna let James Milner take a penalty again for old time's sake against his former club. I'm in. I'm 100% in. Alex, I do want to ask you one final closing question. You pointed out in the YNTA conversation, the text thread that we have, you pointed out that it always seems like we play poorly the first time that we wear a third kit each season. Do you have any different feelings about the McDouble kit now that you've seen it in action, or it still pretty much feel the same?
It looked better on person than it did in the mock-ups. That said, I still don't like it.
Okay. I actually go a little bit the opposite way. I liked it in the mock-ups and didn't like it as much as when I saw it in person, which I know is a little bit weird because most of the time all the kits look better once they're actually on a player. But this time around, it kind of goes the opposite way for me. I was kind of like, well, it's not as great as I thought it was going to be. But I also realize I'm one of the weird ones that liked them to begin with.
I think the takeaway from both of our realizations is that we just shouldn't wear them again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna put it on the same level as Toxic Thunder, of like how little I ever want to see it again, because Toxic Thunder is one of those things that like I never wanted to see it in the first place.
Right.
This I at least was willing to give it a shot. The McDoubles, I was in. I was like, yeah, sure. So yeah, all right. Well, tweet at us your thoughts now that you've seen the McDoubles in action. Everybody at YNTA Podcast, we want to hear what you have to say if your opinion on it changed at all once they were actually worn and out there for everyone to see. So this has been an episode of You'll Never Talk Alone. We'll go ahead and wrap things up. Obviously wishing a speedy recovery to Trent Alexander-Arnold, hoping that is not a major issue he has to deal with, because we know how important he is as a player and how wonderful he is to watch. So obviously want him to come on back as soon as possible. But either way, I think we're ready to rise to any challenge at all. It's going to be a crazy weekend. Alex, any closing thoughts, sir?
Let's get them.
Let's get them. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on YNTA. Dedicated in honor of Andrew Ainsworth. I didn't forget. There was a moment in which I was like, oh no, I wrapped it up too quickly. How did I forget this joke? How do I tie it in here? And but I found a way. It wasn't good. It wasn't good, but I found a way. Which is how I think we're going to win this weekend.